Hello again, everyone. Nice to be back on YouTube. Finally, it's December. It's been a busy month, so I apologize and being so slow to put up videos. I'm going to do one pretty basic today. Freddie the Freeloader. It's a blues in B flat, but I'll try to do something a little bit different than I've done before on B flat blues. At least look at it a little bit differently. First, I'm just going to play left-hand guide tones. And since most chords in the blues are dominant chords, the third and the seventh would be this. For B flat, E flat, third and seventh, B flat, seventh and third. And then the F, seventh, right up here. And the interesting thing about Freddie the Freeloader is that the last two bars, at least the first time through the blues there, it looks like you play the blues through twice and the first ending is different than the second ending. I didn't ever really realize that, but now I do. That the turnaround there, the two bars at the end of the first 12 bar section, is an A flat seventh chord, which kind of sneaks right back up to B flat to start the blues again. And I think it's interesting why they use this, or why Miles Davis put that chord in there. You know, I hear all kinds of newfangled ideas, music theory ideas on YouTube, and a lot of it is just the same theory that's been around for hundreds of years, just kind of recycled and put sometimes what I think are kind of silly names to it. One thing that comes to mind is negative harmony. Negative harmony has been around for, back to Bach at least. And you could interpret this A flat seventh chord, I think, as negative harmony. And I think negative harmony does have some validity, and I've done some work on it already and used it a little bit myself. So I'm not discounting it entirely, but I don't think it's anything really new. All right. A flat seventh at the end of a B flat blues. All right. So, in negative harmony, the five chord, the notes of the five chord get rearranged. They flip positions along certain axes. And this chord actually turns into this chord. Okay. Instead of F7, if you went the negative way on the cycle of fifths, you kind of come up with an E flat minor 6 chord. And A flat seventh, when played with the ninth as well, is an E flat minor 6 chord with an A flat in the bass. So I'm saying this is kind of like negative harmony. And I think the reason it works so well is when you're playing this chord, you're only 2 half steps away from an F7th. And just like you can go, and instead of doing a 2-5-1, you can go a 2-1. I mean, you don't always have to go to the 5 chord. The 2 will just go right to the 1 also. And negative harmony, it kind of works the same way. If you have the E flat minor 6 and think of that as your 2 chord, and then you go to the dominant chord and then to B flat, well, suppose you just skip the dominant chord. And so you have a negative 2 chord. It's really the flat 7, so it's 2 in this direction instead of that direction. You're playing A flat ninth chord. But you could call it, in negative harmony terms, you could call it E flat minor 6th. And you're leaving out the dominant chord and just going right to B flat. So A flat to B flat. It works, and I think really it is still just another example of good old-fashioned dominant motion. And that's something I think that if you avoid dominant motion, you do so at your own risk. I think most listeners, most music lovers rely on dominant motion to get them really involved with the piece. Now, you can avoid it for a long, long, long time and still lead the listener to it, kind of the way Stravinsky does in the Symphony of Psalms, where he goes through a lot of kind of modern harmonic devices and things, but eventually leads to kind of a big minor 2-5-1, something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's right at the point where it goes Alleluia in the Symphony of Psalms by Stravinsky. Yeah, a wonderful moment, full of a powerful emotion, and it all comes from just using the dominant motion, good old 2-5-1. All right, so that's my contention that negative harmony is still, it's not really negative. All right, now, what blues scales can you use with Freddie the freeloader? Two instantly come to mind, but there are more. First one, of course, is just the B-flat blues scale. Okay, and it's just a little sidebar here. Fingering on this scale is no easy matter on the piano because you've got 4 black keys in a row and then 2 white keys. So if you're trying to keep your thumb off the black keys, like, you know, that's the recommended fingering on many passages, is not put your thumb on a black key. But I think in this case, you have no choice. If you want to keep going up the scale, there's a fingering that works. Now, using 1, 2, 3, 4, it gives you the first 4 notes of the blues, and if you're just using those notes for your melody at the moment, then you can use that fingering, of course. And you can really use any fingering. There's lots of fingerings that could be used and practiced. That's the one I've been liking currently. Okay, so there's that. That's the first scale. Then there's the blues scale that's in the relative minor. That would be a G blues scale. Right, the relative minor of B-flat is G. But don't think of it as a G scale. Think of it as a different form of a B-flat blues scale. It has the root, the second, the flat 3, and the 3. All right, that's that little chromatic part of the scale. And then the 5 and the 6. So you have this scale, the first one, and this one. All right, and that one comes from the G blues scale. All right, so those two scales can be pretty much used interchangeably on the B-flat 7th chord. Anytime you're on B-flat 7th, you can use both of those scales. Now, when you get to the E-flat scale, you might think, well, the E-flat blues scale is going to work the best, but it really doesn't. And you can make it work if you're using a real strong motivic idea. Like, for instance, you're playing a blues that the main melody was something like this. And then you went right to E-flat. And then went back to B-flat. In that case, it works. But if you're just improvising a solo, it sounds better to, like I did just then, stay on the B-flat blues scale. Now, if I try the E-flat scale, let's see what happens. Well, that actually worked out pretty well. But it's certainly have to use a lot more care in using that particular scale. And for now, I think, especially if you're a beginner, I would avoid that one. However, when you get to the F chord, it's pretty close to the original B-flat blues scale. So I think that one you can get away with using it and actually just use it to your advantage because it's going to, give you a couple different notes and make it sound like you're not just using one scale through the whole thing. So there I kind of used a little bit of both. The B-flat blues scale and the other B-flat blues scale that's derived from the G blues scale. And I didn't use much of it, but I used a little like this. Right there. That little part right there. And look, that's the same kind of shape as that, see?